What's going on, guys? Brent0331. Appreciate you guys tuning in. This is another episode of Interview with Warfighters. And I got Logan here, who you guys may or may not have seen. We did a stream with him just out of the blue. He was in the chat and said that he was a veteran of Ukraine. He was a volunteer, went over there, and had recently come back. So we had brought him on for a short period of time. And coincidentally, this dude just happened to be in my neighborhood. So invited him over to the casa. Yes. Welcome, Logan.
Thanks.
So, yeah, we're going to do an interview with Warfighters, get to know him a little bit better. So, if you don't mind, man, let's go back. And you are a U.S. Army veteran.
Yes.
And, if you can give us, what you were thinking, what led you in that direction, and what made you, join the United States Army.
I've always wanted to join the Army since I was a kid. All my fathers and grandfathers were veterans, Vietnam era, World War II, World War I, and back further, Spanish-American War. So I was raised in a culture of every man in the family goes to war or is in the Army. And most of my family graduated from military academies like New Mexico Military Institute or West Point. And so when I graduated high school, my natural inclination was to follow in their footsteps. So I went to New Mexico Military Academy like my uncles and grandfathers, and went through their 2-year commissioning program, and I went to Ranger Challenge, and I did all these things. My PT was on point, and I was like, I'm going to be a combat arms officer. And and when I did my contract, when I another semester, and the branches came down, and I was excited, and the commandant brought me in his office, and he's like, got a good one for you, Adjutant General Corps. And my whole world fell apart at that point.
No, what year was this?
2001.
Okay.
2001 to 2002. And I'd gone to all the, the cadet training at Fort Knox, and then I went to the one in the advanced training in JBLM at that time. And I was ready to commission and everything. And when they said AG, I don't know, maybe I was young and reckless, but I went to the superintendent of the school, and I was like, is there any way we could change this? And I was pretty disheartened about the whole thing, and he recommended that I either stick with it and try to transfer branches, which he said is probably going to be impossible, unless you're selected for a special duty like SF or Delta or something like that. And so he said the other alternative is that you have a military, you're enrolled in the National Guard as a SMP cadet, so you could go with your unit, New Mexico National Guard. It was some ADA unit or something like that. And I said, what is the other choice? And he said, well, you can just enlist for active duty, and I can take care of it myself. And so the superintendent basically went through the paperwork, made phone calls, and contacted the local, I think he was the first sergeant of the recruiting battalion or something. And he set me up. They brought me in. They said, what do you want to do? And I gave them a list of stuff I wanted to do. And originally they put me down as an 18X contract to go to Camp McCall and do the train up for...
What is an
18X is it's like a pipeline at that time, to go directly into it to become a Green Beret.
Oh, okay.
So when I went to MEPS and did all my paperwork, they were finishing up something, and I hadn't even taken the oath yet. And the lady said, "Hey, just today this letter came down that said they're opening up for the very first time the counterintelligence agent course to level 1 students, so privates to specialists can go, because they had such low numbers, I guess."
Yeah.
And this was 2000. It was the end of 2002, and I think they knew that they were going to start the invasion of Iraq, and so they were trying to plus up their intelligence personnel. And so I said, "Yeah, that sounds interesting." And then she's like, "You can always go, SF later if you want to." And so I signed up, 97 Bravo counterintelligence agent, went to did my basic training, and then went directly to Fort Huachuca. And basic training in AIT was so easy for me because I'd already gone through all of the officer stuff. So basic, I'd studied almost for 2 years, like officer stuff, like your basic battle drills and like leadership and stuff like that. So all the AIT and basic training was like a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And went to school. We started our intelligence course, which it was like intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Your basic like investigatory tasks, your how to do interrogations. They paired us with a human person so that we did like learn both the human like interrogation side and our own agent side. And so we did like kind of like how to be a case officer, how to run sources, informants, how to be like on your own, like in a battle space and conduct covert, semi-covert, and covert activities, tradecraft, that kind of thing. Graduated from that course in I think it was like July or August of 2003. And the war had already kicked off, and I remember General Marks, Spider Marks, was the commander of the school, intelligence school, and he had a formation with our class, and he's like, "Hey, just so you know, you're going to be deployed when you graduate. You're going to Iraq." And people like started crying, like
God.
I don't know what it is, like people just were still joining the military at that point and like thinking I'm gonna just go to college and.
Yeah, I mean, after September 11th, 2001, like, if anybody joined the service not expecting to go to war, like, you were fucking living on Mars.
Exactly. I didn't understand that at all.
It reminded me of, what was it? I think it was when the ISIS stuff was going on, and Obama was president, and he had set like a red line or whatever for Assad.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, if they use chemical weapons, this is a red line, and we'll intervene and stuff. And like, there was like video of some army soldier, and I might be thinking of a different conflict or something that was brewing, but it was like there was talk of deployment, right?
Right.
And there was a video of some army soldier, female soldier, that was like bawling. She's like, I didn't sign up to go to war. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Been at war for like 15 years or something.
But regardless, like, you can't join the military and not expect to deploy or go to war.
They do it though. They do it.
So
yeah. Anyway, so I graduated. Like he was right. As soon as I graduated, I had like some leave time, and then went literally right to my unit. Went to Fort Gordon. I was assigned to 513th MI battalion or brigade, which is like the it's like CENTCOM's intelligence core asset. And I was in 202nd MI battalion, and they were all on block leave for pre-deployment, and so there was nobody there. And got there, and then people started trickling in, and I realized my unit, my particular battalion, my company, those guys had gone to Afghanistan during the invasion, as part of like the invasion package.
The initial invasion?
Yeah. And then they had literally had like 6 months off.
Yeah.
And then they went to Iraq for the invasion. So like they were like the most jaded motherfuckers that I had ever met in my whole life.
But just the intelligence game for the GWAT had to be unbelievably intense.
Yeah, and they were a lot of them had been stop lost. Like one of the first people that had ever been stop lost, like they were like, you can't get out, we're deploying to Iraq again. And so did pre-deployment training, and very limited. And I think I was the only private in the entire battalion. And so they treated me like I was like instead of like making me do everything bad, they like treated me like a mascot or something. I don't know, because I could have came in as a specialist, but I was like, no, I just want to be a private. I don't want to do the whatever.
Yeah. You want some more
coffee? Yeah, I'll take some more. And yeah, it was great. All veterans, they all knew what they were doing. So I had some good mentorship in that unit, even though a lot of them were assholes. But there's a reason they were angry. It was the end of 2003, and we did all the, logistical stuff. The guys packaged everything to get ready to movement stuff, and then we went over as a battalion and went to Kuwait, did our Rifle Zero. You did the same thing. What time? I can't remember. When did you guys go to because you were there at the same time I was, so you guys were like in the same timeline I was, like in Kuwait.
When was it? February we set sail because we floated over there, and then I think we were on the water for a month before we got to Kuwait.
Oh, so you're a little behind us. So but you were there in April, right? Of 2004.
Maybe it was January we set sail. Oh, you're talking about my second deployment?
Yes. Because you
so,
were in the invasion, but you came back,
yes,
and then you were there in 2004 as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were there in April, so you got there like in January?
My second deployment, I was in Najaf in August, is when that the battles Najaf kicked off, and it wasn't. We took over that battle space, and it wasn't but like a couple weeks later that we were hooking and jabbing with the Mahdi army. So
yeah, it was my initial arrival into country was kind of strange because we got to Kuwait, we did all our stuff, and then we crossed the berm. We convoyed up, did the Scania, went all the way through, and we got to Abu Ghraib, which was like where the battalion headquarters was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And everything was supposed to be there. Everybody was supposed to be there. And the moment we arrived, they were like, everybody, don't go anywhere. And this like reservist sergeant major and a colonel came up, and they said, we need to have a briefing with everybody right away. And they said, there's journalists here and investigators, and you're not to say a fucking thing. And we're like, we just got here. Like, what are we gonna say? And at that time, we didn't know, but General Fast and the reservists and whatever the prison guards there were like being investigated. Like right then, like they had just arrived, for the Abu Ghraib stuff. And this was before like it came out as on the news,
Really?
Yeah. So like, so the military was already like aware of what was happening before it became public. And
what a mess up.
yeah, so I guess our colonel was pretty smart, and he was like, well, I'm just gonna disperse my assets, and so he kind of changed the deployment plan to be our guys are supposed to be like a core asset, like general support.
Yeah.
And basically he made a bunch of us like half and half, direct support and general support, so he called and changed the war plan. And so we got kicked out to Bakuba in the Diyala province, and then our sister teams were like in Muqtadiya, like the Iranian border, and like Samara and some other places. And that was like part of our company.
What would you guys do? Would you be like attached an infantry unit, or
we're basically the same as the Marine CI human teams. So they later on when I did like human CI management stuff, it's kind of the same exact setup. Like I can't remember what they're called. CI human CITs in the Marine Corps or something like that. But it's the same kind of team setup. You got like humenters and CI people together. And sometimes you have like an uplift guy, like a combat arms guy or a mechanic or whatever they can spare to be like your driver or some kind of like support person, because you're out there by yourself. And a lot of times your logistics and your administrative and support stuff is like far away from you. And your supported unit, which ours ended up being 3rd Brigade, at that first part it was a 4th ID under Colonel Hogue, who was a fucking badass. But it was basically like a bunch of 113s, and it was like a heavy brigade. And they were really good. They had been there for almost a year already, and we did some missions with them initially. At that time when I arrived, you could still walk around the streets, and they weren't like giving you flowers and going,
right.
But they weren't like trying to dirty looks or anything. It wasn't that bad. But as soon as the Abu Ghraib stuff came out in public, I think that was probably around like January or February, the mood changed, of course. And we were in like the governor's old compound in the middle of the city in Bakuba Kadima, which is like the old part of the city. And I remember the mood changing, and they were like, we had close ties with like the local ODA, and they would go and do their off-post missions in their Hiluxes and stuff, and they would come back and tell us, hey, it was kind of, we went to go get ice cream, and something was weird. We talked to some of our sources, and I got pretty close to the 18 Fox. He's their intel sergeant, and he would keep us updated, and he was like, shit's about to kick off, dude. And then in April we started getting ambushed more. The local forces started getting ambushed more, and our sources started coming in and telling us, there's guys coming in from the countryside, and they're gonna plan something.
Is this 2005 now?
No, 2004 still.
Okay.
Like before the real bad shit happened.
Yeah.
And then in April, everything went to hell, and you had Jaish al-Mahdi, the original Jaish al-Mahdi, the very first formation of that, started conducting attacks, and then you had they joined forces with the revolutionary groups of 1952 and all the Ba'ath Party dudes, and they kind of all were united, and I think it wasn't just the Abu Ghraib stuff. It was the State Department, who generally fucks things up, decided they didn't want to pay the Army their last paycheck and give the people that were retired their severance pay, or their retirement that they were supposed to be getting, their pensions. So they cut all the pensions off, which I don't understand the thinking of that, but they pissed a lot of guys who had weapons and were trained. They pissed them off.
So I was watching a documentary. I can't remember what the documentary was, but yeah, they were talking about that, right?
Yeah.
How essentially, Saddam's army was dismantled, and it's you look at World War II, right, and how we handled things in Germany and Japan and whatnot, and we had blueprints. We saw what worked, what didn't work, and yeah, you wouldn't think we'd make those same mistakes. Fast forward to the GWAT when we're dealing essentially with the same thing, right? A conquered nation, you got to rebuild its infrastructure and its military and stuff like that. And it's no, it's not a good idea just to say, all right, man, staff NCO and the former Army, you don't have a job anymore.
Yeah, and we're not going to give you one.
Yeah. Go pound sand and find something to do, even though you've been trained for war. What else do you think that dude's going to do?
Exactly. I mean, I know what I would do if somebody stopped paying me my pension right now.
Exactly, 100%.
So yeah, so they attacked us. I think April was probably one of the worst times there. And it was pretty bad there before, with IEDs and just, doing raids and people fighting us, but it wasn't that bad. But in April, we had the first major battle of Baku, had 400 or 500 guys surround the government district and try to kill all of us. And at that time we only had half a platoon of engineers. I think 4 guys from the ODA showed up, and we had State Department people there, so they had real mercenaries. I'm not talking the dishwater, blackwater guys that most people are used to. These were real. At that time they had the real former Australian SAS guys, real mercenaries, Foreign Legion guys that were in Africa,
the Travis Haley Najaf video.
Yeah,
right? All those dudes were Force Recon, Navy SEALs and stuff that.
Yeah, that level of dudes. Yeah. They still had that then. So we had probably 12, 15 of those types. So a lot of those guys that I, over the course of those months, they took care of me. They were they were the guys you looked up to. They would teach you stuff and everything. It was cool. But yeah, so we fought off those dudes for weeks, and even had helicopters get shot down, and you can read about all that stuff in April. It's kind of the same stuff you were talking about in Najaf.
Yeah.
And I don't think the fighting ended until maybe right before Phantom Fury kicked off, because things started to die down, and they said, okay, Team 322, you're going to go to Fallujah for Phantom Fury, because our direct support unit, I was Lieutenant Grider and 2-2 Infantry Punisher Platoon Charlie Company, and that was my direct supported team, or platoon or whatever, and they ended up going with F Troop, some Bradleys, to go on the outskirts, and so my team followed them, and our like job was going to be like do on-site interrogations and collect intelligence like from the captured people. And right when everything kicked off, I think like the night it happened, the like Sergeant Major was killed for 2-2. Is right as they crossed like the berm to go over the top. And I think at that point, like, there were no prisoners taken, especially even the Marine side.
Yeah.
There was no people to interrogate, and so they said, "Well, we don't need everybody here." They sent half of my team to the ice factory to do body exploitation, so like taking intel scraps off of their bodies and stuff, and cataloging, their nationalities if they could or whatever. And then we went back because Samara was starting to get bad at that time. And so we went to Samara, and then we did some stuff there. And then I think after Phantom Fury, things kicked up even more, and there was like more foreign fighters coming in all the time. And
I can't help but think too, Phantom Fury, like I remember, like there was a period where they gave the people in that town or Fallujah, they were like, look, we're coming in. Like, you can either stay and you will die, or you can fucking evacuate your house and flee the city. And they let those people out. So,
and they did it. I feel like they learned a valuable lesson then, that they should have filtered those people and collected intelligence from them coming out, but they didn't. I think they were more interested in just getting as many people out as they could, as soon as they could, because the more foreign fighters that arrived, the harder it was going to be for you guys to clear the city. And I remember the day I left, I had never heard, like, I had been in a bunch of battles already, like maybe like 10 to 20 like real fights, and when I heard it kick off, man, I had never heard like the continuous sound of like gunfire and artillery over and over again. Like, it was incredible.
So at that time, when that second Fallujah offensive kicked off, we were down in Abu Ghraib prison, which, as you know, is not far away.
Yeah.
Because we had gone up there to relieve a rifle company in 3-1, because they were going to join the rest of their battalion in that offensive. So we took over their battle space, and I mean, we could hear the 25 Mike from our LEB 25s in Fallujah. And the artillery just pounding the living crap out of that place.
Yeah, and that was our other support unit was 1/6 Field Artillery, and they were the ones that got to shoot into the city. It was interesting, but
did you guys have? Because I don't remember seeing these back then, but when I went to Afghanistan in 2011, we had like the BAT system and stuff where you like scan eyeballs.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can talk about that later because I actually was in charge of that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but they didn't have that.
Right, so all that was developed.
Yeah, it was a little, maybe like 1.5, 2 years later that actually became like a thing. But because I remember in 2004, like we had our biometric kits that we were doing where they came with like the dead man's finger roller, because you've dealt with the dead bodies too, and like we tried to collect biometrics from. Like when a guy would blow himself up, or like if there's dead guys, and we try to identify them or whatever. And you'd have to like put a special finger brace, because otherwise, like when you come to a dead Iraqi or something, like after a while they die and their like fingers are like this.
Yeah.
So you have to like
unpry them.
what I mean? To roll their fingers or whatever to get a fingerprint. But we didn't have those electronic ones. Yeah, it was crazy, dude. Yeah, so. After 2004, I think it was like we went back to Kuwait and like demobilized, and I think it was by that time it was like February 2005 or something like that. Came back, and all the guys who were stop lost, they let go. So like basically the entire battalion was gone, and they had to reform the entire battalion with new people, and so they made a new company, and I got sent to Delta Company, and. Basically, my job was like to train all the new people that came in, all the new CI and human people, and they made me a sergeant. Like, I had like fast tracked all the way from private to E5 in like less than 2 years, some crazy amount of time. God, and I remember I didn't even wear the rank because like we had sanitized uniforms, so like I remember my commander, he's like a ground branch guy now, but he came like on a special trip, and he's like. congratulations, you're a specialist. And then he's like, okay, bye.
I remember that we had a Marine Corps human intelligence team
Yeah.
attached to us, and it was a male. I think he was a staff sergeant, and he had 2 female Marines with him, and they were all enlisted. But same thing, they never wore rank, or they wore like different rank, like lower rank, right, to try to blend in.
Yeah. So sometimes like you like we were authorized to wear like basically whatever rank, like not impersonating like an officer or something like that.
Right.
But they figured out maybe it was like when I first got there, we replaced a reserve unit, and I was like, "Are you all captains?" And they're like, "No, we're not. We're like specialists and sergeants and stuff," because they had captain rank, and they figured out that the Iraqis, kind of like other countries, like all their intelligence people are all like officers.
Yeah.
And so the Iraqis, if they knew that you were like an officer, like for liaison reasons and for like interrogations and other stuff, like they took you more seriously. And so a lot of times, like even if you didn't say anything, like you weren't, I didn't wear rank. I never wore anything, but they would refer to you as like Captain Logan or Major Logan or something like that. And I didn't say anything, but like they just assumed that you were something,
That cultural thing is just so, especially in your MOS field.
Yeah.
But it's like I remember, like pistols. Like pistols were like a sign of prestige and stuff over there.
Yeah, officer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like as a gunner, when I was a gunner in Iraq, like we had a secondary as a pistol, and like same thing. Like Iraqis would think if they just saw us, with our pistols, they would think we were an officer or something, because of that.
Yeah, it was also like the cultural thing there was I remember because I was a gunner a lot of times with my 60, and a guy would, you'd bring your turret over and point it at a car and be like, stop, whatever, and they'd be like, I don't care, you're not going to shoot me with that thing. But as soon as you pull that pistol out, they would be like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
yeah. Because I thought this guy's about to execute me. But yeah. So anyways, we demobbed. I trained up the new batch, and the battalion was refilled, and I left the 202nd in early 2006, and went to Germany, and I was part of 5th Corps. They're like G2 Special Activities section, and it's like the G2X and like some other people from USER or like the U.S. Army Europe. And my unit was already deployed. Again, my unit was already deployed to Iraq as like the Corps headquarters.
Yeah.
MNCI. And so I, again, did a quick train up, right to Iraq, and took over as a CI Human Management Section NCO, and I got there and everybody was, I think it was like a colonel and a few captains, and we had a warrant officer from the UK, a warrant officer from Australia, we had a Ukrainian major and a captain from Korea, and I think it was like one staff sergeant and me, so like everybody else was like an officer or something. And my job was to like manage all like daily for the commanding officer. I think it was like Odierno or somebody at that time, but like to be part of his staff and like create the briefings and like functionally like manage all the human NCI assets, like their reporting, their like asset management, like where we needed them to be, and then like of course like the intent from the commander, like exactly where he wanted his assets to be to collect the most intelligence, like in the surge. It was like the beginning of the surge at that time. And then
what year was this again?
2006. So like this was like around the time like probably a couple months before like Arrowhead Ripper and stuff, that when the Striker Brigade went back into Bakuba to like, because it had gotten so bad there between that time that they had basically had to do another Fallujah and go in and like clear the whole city. And so during that battle, I didn't get to go to that battle again, which I don't know, it probably could have been useful because I knew the whole city like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
And I'd walked around the whole thing. And they had me doing, basically they had set up a field office Iraq, which was like basically a semi, let's say like they did like semi-covert operations and like CI functional investigations and other strategic stuff above corps level, and they had different teams and like they had like one at the Green Zone, one in Baghdad, one in Mosul, one in the west, one in the east, one in the south, like everywhere. And so basically I went on tour to all these different officers to do inspections and just hang out with them, really, honestly. And so I got to do that. That was fun. And it was actually a very quiet. I got to work with a lot of like task force level people, like SF, like JSOC people, but I didn't get to go to any raids. I never did a raid. It wasn't a battle or anything. It was chill. It was like the chillest deployment I had. And got back to Germany, and partied a lot. And my the returned and everything, and then just did training or whatever. It was chill, and we tried to have we focused on like Europe stuff at that time. And
is this when you met the Ukrainian guys?
No, because they had been in Iraq before, and then I think between that time we did like a few, because we had like all the op plans for Europe.
Yeah.
So we like reviewed all the op plans for Europe, and we had some like scenarios like where Iran like invaded Azerbaijan, like Baku, to like seize the oil fields or something like that. So we had like those kind of op plan training, like where we would like deploy our fake headquarters to like go and
gotcha
whatever. And 2007 came, and everybody was still kind of focused on Europe, and my colonel changed out with another colonel, and she was from, I think, like DIA or like TFO, like Task Force Orange or something, some ISA. She was in the ISA at somewhere, and she had connections with all these SF units, like Tier 1 people, and she was like, we're kind of plussed up right now when we're not doing anything, so what do you want to do? I'm like, I kind of want to deploy again. And our unit wasn't slated to deploy again for a while. And she's like, I can make it happen. And so the next week after that, she says, I got orders for you. And I was like, what did they say? She's like, you're going to SOC Cent. Temporary reassignment to SOC Cent. And I was like, cool, what am I doing? I'm not going to Tampa, right? And she's like, no. And she's like, you're going to task force in Balad. And so I went to like a quick train up, because they had some other guys that were like it was like me and like a couple of doctors, like medical doctors.
Yeah.
They had assigned to SOC Cent to like do medical shit, and they had a couple of colonels that they brought out of retirement, and a couple of majors they brought out of retirement to because this is still during the surge, and they were like, you're going to SOC Cent to do this mission. And so I arrived in Balad, and I met Colonel Tovo, who was in command of 10th Special Forces Group at that time, and the unit was CJ Sodif AP, so like the combined Joint Special Operations Task Force in charge of like Persian Gulf, Iraq, everything. And he was like, hey, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'll do whatever, like I'm ready, like I'm hungry, And he's like, I can have you do 2 jobs if you want. And I was like, sure, whatever. And so I worked for Chief Williamson, who was like the CI warrant officer for, he was like the subject matter expert for like the task force. And so I did like, I was in their like skiff, like doing like management stuff with their operational control element, and that's like their kind of like their intelligence, like head of intelligence of that section, and their analysts, and like working as a like in a somewhat staff function, but you're like doing targeting, like I would be sitting at my desk like doing reports, like going over reports from all the like SEALs and task force guys and Green Berets. They send their own intel, and then you'd like compile it into like a summary, and you'd give it to the analysts and blah. But sometimes stuff would happen, like a SEAL commander would come in the room and be like, Logan, I need you to give me everything on this village. We're leaving, wheels up in like 1 hour. I'm like, shit. like that kind of pressure, you know what I mean? And then, like he as he promised, Colonel Tovo had me working 2 jobs. He had me working with the human team that like was in charge of like the local area around Balad, and so I went to work for, it was Sergeant First Class Anderson and another guy, and from 20th Group, I think he was from 20th Group, and so I went with them. Like during the day, I was with them, you know, doing all this like cleaning the minigun and driving the Humvee and going on missions with them, going to meet all of our sources. We like set up a tribal like defense force, and then at night I was working in the skiff with the SIGINT people doing targeting and doing my other job. And then for a little bit I got to go to like the other side of the airfield, which was like Task Force 16, Task Force 17, and that was like my last month there. And once my orders were up, my commander back in Germany was like, you can do whatever you want. You can come back or you can stay there. And I was like seriously thinking about staying there before I had gone to like 16 and 17.
Yeah.
But the op tempo, and I can't talk about that, but the op tempo there at that location on the other side of the airfield was so bad that like I was like, I can't. Like, I literally like am dying. They were like, we want you to stay another 6 months. I'm like, no. Absolutely not. I am going to die. And
how long were your deployments typically?
the first one was like a year, and then the next one was like 9 months, 10 months, and then that one was 6 months, I think.
So, just so everybody knows, that's a dog toy. Hopefully my wife is taking care of that. Sorry, man.
That's fine. You can edit that out. So I got to the end of that deployment. They wanted me to extend for 6 more months, and I was like, no, there's no possible way I could like mentally and physically endure another 6 months of this high up. Because I mean, you have your intel support guys are there,
yeah,
and you know a lot of, I would say, the task force, and I'm talking like JSOC stuff, and those guys like a lot of those guys, like their intel guys, are contractors, like literal like civilians, you know, probably former JSOC guys and other intel guys from like agencies and stuff, and they switch out like probably every 6 months to a year, but they get paid. They were getting paid like $1,000, $2,000 a day, you know.
It's insane.
And one of my friends, he was working there he was making so much money, but they were like,
isn't it crazy that they're there doing essentially the same
job?
doing
Yeah.
and they're just blowing us away.
But the action arm guys, like the actual shooters, the actual like shooters, like those guys, they have the same op tempo, you know.
Yeah.
But they get to switch out every 3 months, so like whether it's like Green or you know, CAG or whoever it was, like they got to switch out every 3 months, and the support guys like just have to eat shit, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I was like, there's no way that I could stay doing this job for another 6 months, anyways. So I went back to Germany, and hung out there for a while, and trying to think what I wanted to do. And at that point in my career, like, it was the first time that I had been offered warrant officer, to go warrant officer, and I didn't do it for whatever reason. I can't remember exactly why. I think it was because I felt like I wouldn't be doing my job anymore, and I'd be like a manager, and I was like, I love doing everything. I don't want to be like the guy that sits in the office. Because I had warrant officers, and they still do some stuff, but they're managers. And I went to, they were like, hey, we have a priority fill position. And I was like, great, what is it? I'm going to Fort Bragg. So I went to Fort Bragg, went through the replacement company, and ran down Long Street a bunch of times, and basically just got assigned to like I think it's like the theater support command for 3rd Army there.
Yeah.
And it was pretty chill, honestly, and they just like did Fort Bragg stuff, and so like I got sent to like the local, just like they had the field officer rack, they had like their local resident offices there. And the colonel there was just like, just write this doctrine stuff for me, and then you can literally do whatever the hell you want. Literally, like you don't even have to show PT, like nothing. Like it was so chill. And so I went to go work for the local resident office for CI, and the guy was a former JSOC major who was in charge of the office, and he just like literally was like, well, you guys want to go do some training with guys over in the Red Roof Inn, over in the ranges, like whatever, And so I was like, yeah, sure. So we just like went from like doing training with over with JSOC guys. We did training with the local aviation brigade, like doing everything. Just it was like a playground almost, like because if there's slots for training, there's I think the funnest thing I did there was we got to be volunteered to be bad guys for the guys training, like those
like OP4.
Yeah, like OP4 for like those units that
that's the
train
best,
all the time. And I got shot with a lot of simulations.
Nice. I always had more fun being the OP4.
Yes.
Than actually doing like exercises and stuff.
It's like like if you were like some kind of OP4 that like got to do stuff, but like our job was just to like stand in a building and get shot by by tier 1 guys. Yeah. But it was fun. It was fun, and then my unit, they were finally like, hey, do you want to deploy again? And I was like, sure. And so I went to go work for the Field Office Southwest Asia in Kuwait, but we like went everywhere, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, like everywhere, Iraq, like so you'd be like in charge of the whole area, and spent 7 months there.
Nice.
And it was pretty chill. I got to go to like 5 different Arab countries at that time.
So was this your 4th deployment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was pretty cool. Yeah, did a lot of like strategic level intel stuff. And then after that, I came back and met a lady in Raleigh, got married, and at that time, I think the Army decided that like they were done with me deploying for a while, and so I got orders to go be an instructor at Fort Huachuca. And so I got to Fort Huachuca.
What year is this?
Oh shoot, I think it was like 2009. And by that time, they pinned me staff sergeant early.
Yeah.
And left in 2009 to go to Fort Huachuca. Showed up and they said, again, like gave me a choice, which is I was used to getting choices at this point. And they said, do you want to go work in the doctrine section of the center, or do you want to be assigned as the NCOIC of the combat tracker course? And I was like, the latter. So I went to the combat tracker course, and at that time, like it was kind of like getting defunded, kind of like they thought they maybe didn't need it. They changed their mind later on, but it was too late. So I got to do the tracking course and like be part of like the whole David Scott Donnellan Rhodesian tracking system, and spent some time with Eddie. Eddie he was with not Eddie. He interviewed him for one of the Warfighter things. He runs the tracking program too. He was there with when you guys replaced the unit in Abu Ghraib.
You know him?
Yeah, he was one of the instructors there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he it's funny because like he was always talking shit. He was like, nobody's ever caught me. and I ended up on a team with he was like a, before MARSOC, he was like a MARSOC guy.
Yeah.
And like a couple of SEALs from the SEER course in Maine. And man, they were fucking badass. But my team we caught Eddie like right away. He was pissed.
That's funny.
Yeah, and so I got to do that for a while, and then after that course kind of like started to go away, they assigned me to the biometric section, and so we like basically traveled around the country and traveled to Oconus, like doing training on like how to set up the BAT system and like the like how to use all the biometric tools and everything. And we trained like mobile training team stuff. It was so chill.
That stuff tripped me out.
TDY,
Right? 'Cause,
yeah.
Like my when I went to Afghanistan in 2011, well, they had all that stuff. They called it the BAT system, and literally like you're scanning people's eyes, and it keeps databases and stuff of people, and that's how you if you get some random Joe Blow wearing a man dress and a something on his head, and you don't know who he is. You scan his eyes. He could be fucking Osama bin Laden for all you know. So you scan his eyes, and it's like terrorist or whatever it classified him.
Yeah, the retina's great. Yeah, facial recognition at that time wasn't like that good, so you just had to rely on the fingerprints and the retina scan.
It's pretty amazing, like the technology out there that's able to do all this stuff.
And imagine like where it's gonna go. Like now we can do walking, like a person's gait is like individual. Like you can tell somebody by the way they walk. There's so many biometrics, but
we're doomed. Man, the fucking Terminators are just gonna annihilate us all.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about like my training at that time, but I went to like before I got to Fort Huachuca, I went to like a bunch of DIA schools. I went to like an initial like case officer school in Baltimore, and then I went to like do their operations course and like surveillance. They do like it's kind of like, how could I put it, DIA's version of the farm.
Yeah.
And so you do like an operations course, a surveillance course, and like a foreign, how can I say this without giving away too much? Like tradecraft you would use for running double agents and triple agents. So like you go through this process of courses and you become like certified in running certain types of sources and tradecraft.
That's nuts.
But yeah, it was cool. And then when I got to Fort Huachuca, I got to go to even more schools that were there. So I got to go like their advanced schools for our MOS and like weapons intelligence courses, like for doing counter IED. So they teach you how to build IEDs and how to work with the EOD to like render their safe, and then like do all the forensics on site and pre-blast and post-blast analysis. Which it was like a long course, but I got to do that one. That was pretty cool. I was still doing like languages during the time, but I didn't get to go to DLI, so I was studying French and Arabic, and I did some German, but I didn't think I would go back there again. So yeah, I kind of just like took advantage of my time at Fort Huachuca as much as possible, and got like, it was fun being an instructor. Like the last part, I was like writing all the task conditions and standards for like the courses, like for the CI and human courses. So I was like in charge of like reviewing all their training plans and changing the training plans according to how my boss wanted them to be. And left Fort Huachuca and basically just got assigned to JBLM. And my unit was, what unit was, I can't remember the last, 502nd. And,
I'll never understand Army units.
Yeah, it's like, I'm trying to, they all start at like 5 something. Anyways, so they're, I got assigned to 502nd Battlefield Surveillance Brigade. It was like, basically, they have like drones and like a LURS unit and then like intel guys. And we got sent to Afghanistan, like right as I... Oh, sorry, I forgot a whole section. I knew I was missing some... After I left Fort Huachuca, I went to Korea for a year.
Oh.
Yeah, I went to Korea for a year. That was kind of like a black hole. And I was so busy. I got assigned to the local, again, like the local resident office in Seoul.
Yeah.
And my wife was supposed to come with me. I was accompanied, but she's like one of those local girls that'll never want to leave her hometown kind of person. And so they set me up in like a 4-bedroom flat on the river. Like, it must have been like $5,000. And the way the Army works, like they give you like a maximum BAH, like for like housing allowance, and like the Koreans will like literally max it out. So like I was living alone in like a 4-bedroom luxury apartment in Seoul, and I was working for the resident office at the old Sobingildong, which is the old torture prison for the Republic of Korea. Yeah. and the place was haunted. And so I think my office was in charge of doing like CI stuff, investigations, and working with the local, like, I think by that time I was like, I never want to do another CI awareness brief in my life, like, and I don't want to do investigation stuff like so and so, took a flash drive out of this computer and was seen with it walking around with this, that kind of stuff. And so I was like the assistant special agent in charge, and my boss is like, I just need you to take care of liaison because nobody wants to do it. And so I don't know why, but basically you go and meet with your Korean intelligence counterparts, so like Korean KCIA, like, so Korean CIA, they're like DIA guys, they're DSUs, and they're EOD and other intelligence people. So you like meet all, like, in national police. So like you basically, your job was to like wear a suit, go and meet with like some important Korean guy from the Korean CIA, brief him on something, do the same thing with all these other Korean, SMUs and national police and whatever. I think the reason nobody wanted to do it was because a lot of the liaison was like, it took part like after hours, so like you would go and meet at their office and they'd be busy, and so you'd do their business stuff. But then of course in Korea, like, half of it is business side and then half is like the actual like business, like the actual like conversations you have with them take place after hours. So they would invite you to like a bar or like a meeting spot, and like you would drink with them and converse with them and talk about actually talk about stuff.
Any like South Korean titty bars that they take?
Yeah, I mean they're like not titty bars. They're like they're like where you pay for the drinks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And the girls come and sit with you, and like hostess bars.
Gotcha,
they love that stuff. I don't know why, but they always pay you, so I didn't care. And so I did that. I was so busy, and also at that time, like, we thought the Koreans were North Koreans were gonna come over. It was 2013. We thought the Koreans were gonna come over that year, and so my battalion commander was another SF guy, because not all SF guys get to be commanding of soft units, and so he was like, all right, our plan was like to like meet at the headquarters, like in Sabingodong, and he's like our plan, like, for the invasion, if we get invaded, is to do this, but it's not going to ever work because we're not going to be able to like get in the Humvees and the motor pool and drive out of the city.
Yeah.
The roads will all be blocked. He's like, our actual plan is you're going to meet me at the armory. We're going to get, for some reason we had like a shitload of AT-4s. He's like, you're going to meet me at the armory. We're going to draw all the AT-4s and weapons we can get, and then we're going to go sit in a high rise and wait for the armored reconnaissance to come through the city. And yeah, it was fun. But yeah, so it was in Korea, and then I got like back from Korea, and then I got signed to JBLM. And they asked me, do you want to go to JBLM or Fort Hood? And I was like,
what does JBLM stand for?
Joint Base Lewis McChord. Okay. Like in Seattle.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they said, do you want to go there or do you want to go to Fort Hood? And I was like, not Fort Hood. So yeah, so I went to 502nd BFSB, and immediately they were going to deploy to Afghanistan. So I said goodbye to my second wife, and my son had not been. My son had just been born, and so I didn't get to see him that long. But I was like always gone. Like,
yeah,
that's how it goes. Deployed to Afghanistan, and it was funny because the guy I worked for before, he was a Sergeant First Class at FOSWA on my fourth deployment. He was the NCOIC, and now he was a warrant officer. And he knew me and knew what I could do, and knew all the schools I'd been to and everything. And he's like, I'm going to give you the hardest fucking mission for this deployment. And I was like, I'm ready. And he said, your task is we're going to be in like Sodef South, like in Kandahar area, and your job is going to be to go to Spin Bulldog. The base is closing down, and the team that's there right now is a reservist CI human team that doesn't have a good relationship with the local command. And the bases, they're like basically went from like a full size base and they're like shrinking it to nothing, like and pulling out.
Yeah.
And he's like, your job is to do all your regular CI tasks and protect your supported unit and collect intelligence and all the other stuff that you need to do. Also, you need to work with these contractors that were in Kandahar, and our mission was to like do special program stuff. So like, how can I put this? We needed to make it look like we were staying in Afghanistan, and this was like in 2014, like when Obama wanted to pull out the first time, and so they were like downsizing everything. But we needed to make the Taliban understand, especially like right there on the border with Pakistan, that we're not leaving, even though we are leaving, you know. And so we had a local guard force that was there. They were like all like former Afghan soft dudes and army guys that were like they were basically just like mercenaries. And they were going off and like doing the local like DIA team was like sending them like across the border to do things, even though they're supposed to be a guard force, you know, but some of those guys were like badasses. Like one of the guys, he was like I think he was like the commander of the guard force. He was telling me that they paid him extra, and then he like basically went across the border and like got some asset from Pakistan and brought him back, like by himself, like and killed some people, I guess.
Yeah.
Like one man freaking raiding force. Some of those Afghan guys are incredibly badass. Crazy.
We worked with some good ones too.
Yeah.
When I was there, it was like their equivalent to the DEA. And we did a lot of aerial interdiction for kind of going down a rabbit hole, but like we'd stop suspected drug running convoys there because that's how the Taliban funded their war effort was through the sale of like opium and stuff. So we would intercept that stuff, and we had those guys with us, and they were squared away dudes. So they're not like, you know, everybody sees like the video of like the Iraqi soldiers doing the jacked up, you know, side
hops or like passed out from like smoking too much opium.
Right, yeah.
Like so, not those kind of guys.
That's the perception everybody has of like whether it be Iraqi National Guard or, you know, Afghan troops, but the reality is there's, you know, Afghan commandos were pretty squared away.
Yeah, and we had quite a few of those guys there, and so successfully. Literally, like, I was, like, one of the last people to step onto a helicopter to leave the base. And we made the Taliban think. I did all sorts of stuff. Like, I had convoys run with supplies to drop empty boxes of supplies on the base. And I had, like, the engineers built, like, these frames of artillery pieces that were covered with tarps and, like, had them trucked down to the base to make them look like 777s.
Nice.
And like, yeah, we did all sorts of stuff. We kept on doing stuff, but like, the Taliban didn't know we were leaving, so that we didn't get attacked or anything. And of course, like we like did some other stuff, like with the guys, the local like shop owners and stuff that came on the base. We like kind of did some deception with them too to make them think that we were gonna stay, but like we got rid of them, like persona non grata kind of thing. But we're like, hey, we're saying that you're a bad guy, but here's much money. You're not a bad guy. Don't say anything. Kind of sensitize them a little bit, and they gladly took the money and just didn't say anything. What else? After that, went back to Kandahar and got assigned to. Basically, almost kind of like doing the same thing. I was supporting like the local aviation unit, doing. We had like a SIGINT targeting helicopter program that we could like triangulate. It was like kind of like it was called Airhammer. It was like they use these Blackhawks to like is like basically SIGINT platforms, like with you have your SIGINT teams, and they have like a PRD, and they can like trace a line, you know, from radio communications to see where somebody is, and they can kind of like figure out like the line of sight or like triangulate like drop bombs on them or whatever. And we did the same thing, but from helicopters. And then we'd have like an air weapons team and 2 Blackhawks, and we'd fly around and we'd listen to the radio communications. It was all night stuff. Like after that, like night missions for everything. And then there was some other stuff I was doing. I can't talk about special program stuff. But we were again like hampering the Taliban's supplies and deceiving them into thinking that we're conducting operations when we weren't. And there was one of our. Sometimes we'd like land and drop things, and I went on a mission with 7th Group guys, and we were in Shawwalikot, and our engine sucked up a tree branch somehow. I don't know what happened, but we were having problems, and we had to put the bird down, and as we were coming down outside of because we couldn't even land in the base, like we were like basically dropping, and they made it to like right on the outskirts of the base, and crew chief called. He was supposed to call 5 meters, and he's like, everybody get out of the aircraft before it hits. And so everybody was getting ready to jump out of the helicopter, and we weren't 5 meters, we were like 15 meters AGL, and so everybody jumped onto the farm field thinking it was like soft or something, but it was like clotted up hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And managed to put the bird down, and we were all like hurt, like really bad, and nobody came out. Like they couldn't leave the base because it was night, and we basically had to walk. I think it was like 5 kilometers or something. It was in a good situation, but at that time, like you couldn't get like evac like very easily. Like they wouldn't let the helicopters touch the ground most of the time because the limited availability of like evacuation helicopters and stuff like that. And we were at a base that there was no helicopter. It was like a outpost.
Yeah.
And so like we had another helicopter, but they weren't allowed to land because I think maybe like they thought that the helicopter had like come down for another reason other than like a mechanical issue. Anyway, so I got back to the base, went to the hospital at Kandahar, and I had ripped a bunch of stuff in my ankle and broken some bones in my foot, and tried to stay, but my commander was like, we have to downsize, so I'm medevacing you, and it was disappointing because I wanted to stay longer, but got medevac back to JBLM. And thought I would at that time it's kind of sucked because I had finally put my warrant officer packet in and been accepted, and was slotted to go back. I think like 3 months later when the deployment was supposed to finish. I was supposed to go to warrant officer school, and I was messed up. Like I couldn't walk, and so I couldn't go to warrant officer school, and it was a bad time because I was like, they fill you up with drugs and you're like not doing anything, and my unit hadn't got back yet, and so I didn't have to do anything. I was just like rear detachment person, and I was like the rear detachment first sergeant for a while, and they were like, hey, like the unit's coming back, and what do you want to do? And I had a pretty cool like command team at that time with the battalion, and they were like, it doesn't look like your ankle's gonna get fixed for your pathway. You're gonna have to go to like Wounded Warrior or something for a while. And I was like, and so like my battalion commander, who I knew again from like a former, she was like a captain when I was 202nd, and she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, what do you think I should do? And she sat down with the sergeant major, and we were like, they said the best decision that you can make right now is to get out. was like, I was like, how could I do I had only been in like 12, almost 13 years.
Yeah.
12 years.
It's like once you hit that 10-year mark, it's almost like
I was like I was already in def. I had already reenlisted a few times. I was already in def. I was already on the board to be looked at for Sergeant Plus. Anyways, not even thinking about going to War Officer, but they were like, you're not going to be able to do a record PT test for like ever until you get like surgery and all this, and like your career's kind of fucked right now. And she's like, I can set you up so you can get out. And it took me like a few weeks to like decide what to do, but talked to my commander. She was like a former 4th Battalion person from 1st Group, and she was pretty cool too. And they my company command and my battalion command set me up. They sent me back to Wounded Warrior program. And then I just finished up my term of service as a medical retiree, and then got full disability, like went through the disability process, got medically retired, and it was set up pretty well, like medical retirement's pretty good. And after that, like, you wait for your medical retirement money to come in for like 6 months, and I didn't really do much because I was still still couldn't walk. Even when I was out, I was like walking with a cane. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, I'm never gonna get back to anything, doing my job. And I was just trying to like slowly build myself back up. And I think I got out in like March of 2016. And my wife, by the time it was like end of summer, my wife was like sick of me. Like, my second wife was like sick of seeing me. She was used to me being gone,
Yeah.
And she's like, "You're not doing anything. You're just sitting around, like you're not walking around like a freaking crippled person." And I was like, I guess I got to get a job. So I started looking for jobs or going to college or something like that. And I think one night I get a call from my friend Travis, and he was a former SMU guy, worked out of Bragg, and he was like, "Hey man, what are you doing right now?" I'm like, "I'm just chilling, like I'm retired, just getting a paycheck." And he was like, "Do you want to work?" I was like, "Yes, but my wife told me that I can't leave the country." And he was like, "I got something for you." He's like, "How would you like to do a domestic counterterrorism contract?" And I was like, "A domestic counterterrorism contract?" I'm like, "You're joking with me." And he's like, "Nope." And so got set up with a PMC that did it's all ex-Delta guys.
Yeah.
And ended up working for Sergeant Major John Porter and his boss Jim Reese, and we basically did a bunch of counter domestic terrorism, counter foreign intelligence / terrorism stuff. And I can't go too much into it because I've signed an NDA, and basically foreign intelligence was coming in and paying ecological terrorists and domestic terrorists to conduct operations within the United States.
Well, I'm not surprised considering that freaking People's Republic of China has police stations set up here in the United States. So.
Yeah, and it was China, Russia, and a couple other non-state actors that were doing it. And a lot of people think it's just it was a domestic thing, but it wasn't. And so I did that till like the end of 2017. And then 2017 I worked for a couple of other PMCs doing kind of like intelligence collection for the purposes of like protecting like VIPs. And I did that in Mexico for like a few rotations.
Oh, now your wife's letting you get out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So actually, yeah, it was coming to an end though, that marriage as well. So, it's like you can't be gone all the time. No matter how much they want you to stay or go, that's the way it rolls. So I did those. I was in Mexico for a while. Dealt with a lot of the same stuff. One of the last ones I was on was collecting intelligence on Israelis using cryptocurrency to invest in stuff that you can invest in legally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, when you say Israelis, you mean like were they private citizens or?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, and when I say citizens, they could be citizens of Russia. They could be citizens of the U.S.
Gotcha.
But they hold 2 passports. So when they're in Israel, and their companies in Israel, they can invest through cryptocurrency in certain things.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you'll see that a lot of global organized crime and global I would even say terrorism, like ISIS and other organizations like that, you can trace their money back to places in Tel Aviv. Which is crazy because at that time Trump was in office and we were the foreign policy towards Israel was very close. Too close. And the government was still interested, I guess maybe portions of, those factions within the government, and everybody talks about conspiracies and there's QAnon stuff, but I always like to tell people it's not one monolithic conspiracy. It's not. It's a million different dudes in DC and other places that are all trying to fuck each other over and get money. And it seems like they're in the same direction, is their conspiracies and plots and stuff like that, but it's not. It's a bunch of different ones. And at that time there was factions in the government, political appointees and people that knew that Biden was going to be elected in the next term, and they were already looking for stuff. You know what I mean? Or looking to change the foreign policy. And there. And another thing that it doesn't matter who we're friends with during a certain regime. So we're friendly with this country during a certain regime. We're friendly with another country during a certain regime. There's friendly countries, but there's never a friendly intelligence service. Never. So foreign intelligence services at any time are not our friends. Even UK, French, anybody, Israelis.
Yeah, so you hear about that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
Countries that we're allied with, mm-hmm. and for breaching our intelligence mm-hmm. assets and stuff like that. So,
friendly. There's no such thing as a friendly intelligence service, and we have Five Eye program and other stuff, and we have unofficial programs that certain presidents like to just create on their own, and just handing out TS documents to Saudi Arabia and Israel and other people, and Russia. I think people should be held accountable for doing stuff like that, because it's not about who the president is, it's about who, they're responsible for protecting our classified information.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're giving it to their son-in-law to hand out to their friends in other countries for political favors, that's the wrong answer. Because there's people that work very hard and put their lives on the line, Americans, that you'll never hear about. And there's people in other countries that are either convinced or they, for whatever reason, feel the duty to help us gather intelligence and put their own lives at risk and their families' lives at risk, and when people mishandle classified information and treat it poorly, you put those people's lives in the gutter. They're going to be killed.
100%. Well, man, I definitely want to hit your time you spend in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I know your time is limited, mm-hmm. so let's just take a real quick break, hit the head real quick, and then if you don't mind,
yeah.
just kind of go into how you ended up over there and spend as little or as more time as you want.
Yeah, sure.
Talking about that. So yeah. All right. So picking up with I guess part 2 of this interview here. So you served, what was it, like 10 years?
Yeah, like just shy of like 12, 13 years.
It's 12, 13 years. Had an unfortunate accident in Afghanistan. Essentially forces you to get out and completely alters your course in life. You end up doing some private military contractor work, and now here we are, and we have a war taking place in Ukraine, which I mean it's been a hot war, but nothing to the degree of what we saw a little over a year ago.
Yeah, full scale.
So can you just and obviously this is still ongoing stuff, and you can't disclose everything you've done and have experienced, but definitely I know there's a lot of people that'd be very interested in like how you ended up over there, because you did some time over there. You had some acquaintances or people that you met while you were in the U.S. Army, and it kind of led you down that path and found yourself in Ukraine knee deep in it. So
yeah, I think at that time, 2014, I was in Afghanistan, and at that time I think we were kind of used to all the color revolutions happening, and the U.S. It really didn't, this is a politically sensitive subject, and a lot of people will disagree with my views, and some people will agree with them, and at that time I think everybody was kind of jaded about the Egyptian color revolution, all these Arab countries having their Arab Springs and everything, and so the Ukrainian revolution, Maidan, was kind of like a set of revolutions that were happening, and I think nobody really noticed here. Nobody really cared, and some of the guys that I knew in Iraq were, I kept in touch with them, of course, and they were like, hey, we're having this revolution. They were in charge of like mechanized units and doing intel stuff, and their army was shattered at that point, and they went to the east to try to keep their territory as much as they could, and successfully, I think, managed to keep the Russians from capturing their whole country, because knowing what I know now, especially from going over there, it was a very tenuous situation where the entire country could have been taken over if the things fell into place the way they were supposed to be. And a lot of it involved their intelligence services and other people that were already in the pocket of Russia. And I'll get to the reasons, some other stuff that people might not be familiar with, as far as the reasons for the war and the actual events that took place that precipitated everything. I kept in touch with those guys. Some of them died in 2016 on the front, in the trenches. Some of them survived, and some of them got out of the Army, and some of them stayed in. And they kept in contact with me, and they were like, hey, come over here and visit us, or come over and join this unit, And at that time I was working, doing other stuff, and I was like, I can't commit to doing something like that. No. But I will come there at some point. And Ukrainians, some other, they have this, they're kind of I can only compare it to a Japanese mindset, as far as they really believe in honor as a currency system. And when you give your word to somebody, it means something.
Yeah.
So they expected me culturally to honor my oath. You know, and they would always remand me.
You're like, I'll make it over there.
You promised you'd come, and of course I respect that. Man's word is his word. It's his honor, and so when the full scale war kicked off in 2022, I had stopped doing, I was on my third marriage, and she was also a PMC guy, she worked for the same guy, Jim Reese, and so she was in the Army, and she did that kind of tier 1 world and Army world, and so she understood everything, and she was like, I don't want you to do this work anymore. I want you to stay at home with the kids. And so I was like a dad for like, a few years, just chilling. And when the full scale started off in February last year, she was like, "You are not going." Like, she knew exactly. She was like, "You are not going." And of course, I'm getting like phone calls, and they're like, "Hey, full scale started. You're coming, right?" I'm like, "No, not right now." And I was like, literally like, like my wife was at work, and she came home, and she's like, "What is on the table?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "There's a foreign legion contract filled out on the table." What the fuck are you doing? And I was like, "Well, I just wanted to see if I could be accepted," which of course I knew I would be. But she was like, "You're absolutely not going over there." And so, respecting my wife's wishes, I didn't go there at the initial conflict start, and but I started preparing myself for possibly doing it later on. And I told her, "I'm going to go. I mean, I'm not going to go right now, but I'm going to go." And over the course of a year, she kind of was like, "I understand, you need to go." And she's actually from, her family's from Ukraine too.
Oh, okay.
So like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But she's Ukrainian. And she's like, "Well, I guess if you want to go, you can go now." And it was probably February. It had been 1 year, and I talked to my friends, and they said, come on down. We'll meet you. We'll take care of everything." And that's not the usual case for a volunteer. The usual case for a volunteer is they get to Poland or Romania or something like that, and they self-fund themselves, like completely, like go to the border. They got to cross the border with no support, no paperwork, nothing. And then they have to make it to a military recruiting station in Lviv or somewhere else. And then they have to like kind of like, with no, because I mean there's a curfew there, there's block posts, like you have to like show your passport, and like you don't have like a military passport or paperwork or contract or something. It's difficult for an individual person to go there and like do that. So I respect the guys that go over there and like, take the risk to go through that process and like flounder themselves like through the country to get to a military recruiting station and make the process happen. They helped me out a lot. Like they met me with one of their, I guess he's like a access agent or like some sort of like a support agent they had in Warsaw, and he met me at the airport, drove me to the border. He wasn't allowed to cross the border. Put me on, I basically got into a van with a couple of girls that were Ukrainian. They drove me across the border to the gas station. The colonel of the border service was there waiting for me. I had communication with him. He picked me up, and middle of the night drove me to Lviv, and this was end of May. And he dropped me off with this dude who is he's like part of their government, like office of the president. Dropped me off at his like one of his apartments, and he like gave me the keys. He's like, "Here, man, here's the keys for the apartment. Welcome." And I remember looking out my window and seeing the opera house in Lviv, like with the flag flying, and I was thinking to myself, like, "I'm finally here, I'm ready to work." It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And the first alarms, like the air alarms, and nothing really happens. Like, it's this air alarm, like, it's Lviv. It's pretty safe there. And they've had attacks, like missile attacks there, but it's not anything like the other side of the country. And so I spent some time in Lviv, just like meeting people. I think I met every police chief, I met the mayor, I met the regional person, the governor for the oblast.
Yeah.
I met him. They basically just dragged me around like a like an accessory almost, and introduced me to a bunch of people, which was good. I think good at making contacts with people. It's always good. And they're like, well, you're. We like looked into everything. Like they were like, hey, by the way, we're gonna look at your phone. Like you don't have to do anything, but like we know what's on your phone.
What?
Yeah. I'm not even kidding. Like there, cause they pressured me at first. They were like, can you get a Ukrainian SIM card and change your number over? And I was like, yes, but I know exactly what. I mean, they have everything.
Right.
They have like the latest like Israeli freaking Pegasus shit. You know, like they have everything. If they want to get into your phone, they will. And of course they like
without even having it.
Without yeah,
wow.
They knew what my number was, and of course like when I left the apartment, somebody came in and went through all my stuff. You know, they tried to make it look like that they didn't, but like one of the times I was out, they came and looked at my stuff multiple times, and like would look through my laptop. They probably put like a cell bright.
Wow.
Did everything. But they, you know, like the guy that was, he was my host, I should call him. He asked me, hey, he's like, how come you follow Russian Telegram channels? And I was like, because I have to see what they're saying, you know. He's like, well, people had some questions about it, and I was like, well, you can tell them that I look at the enemy's communications and what they're saying, and I look at what the Ukrainians are saying. I look at what everybody's saying. He's like, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Were they ever like, why is your favorite Pornhub actress Russian? Did you not know that she has Russian origins?
No, they did have a lot of questions. Because, I mean, you're walking in the country. I gave them my DD-214. I gave them, like, almost everything. And I was very open about, you know, who I was and, like, what my background was. And... because the last thing I wanted to do was show up to the border, go through the border checkpoint, and say that I'm a volunteer, get to wherever, and then for them to figure out that I'm a foreign intelligence officer in their country.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of things that people don't understand is that Eastern European intelligence services and security services don't fuck around. There's no such thing as like you violated a national security crime and we're going to put you in jail or we're going to eject you from the country or something like that. It's not like the European Union.
Yeah.
It's not like Japan. It's not like essentially other Western style countries. Like if they think that you're a threat, especially during a time of war, imagine showing up to a country in a time of war and you're a foreign intelligence officer and you don't tell them. Or in like your own country, like your own State Department isn't really aware that you're there. And so, of course, they're going to think the worst possible thing. And I've known throughout my experience that it's better just to say who you are. Because they will kill you. They will literally kill you.
Right. Or you'll fall out of a window.
Yeah, you'll mysteriously disappear. Yeah, fall out of a window. Like, they won't know where it happened. He volunteered and he just went to the front and something...
What happened?
He's
missile
missing.
Just coincidentally hit your
missing.
passenger airliner.
Yeah. He was found dead in his apartment. I don't know. But yeah, so they did their thing, and I even like went to interview with like SBU, and I was very clear about it with them too. I was like, this is my background. I want to help. I want to do whatever I can. You know, and my limitations are I will never do anything against the U.S. government. I will never give up my citizenship, and I will never act as an agent against my own country or my own country's interests. And the guys at SBU were very happy with that answer, I guess. They were fine. And they're like, we'll never ask you to do anything that's against your country's interests. Like, we'll never use you in that way. Like, and of course, I don't trust them. So,
right.
You know, but I know, like, having been on the other side, you know, I know what treason is. I know what subversion is, sedition. You know, acting as an agent against your own government. I would never put myself in that position.
Yeah.
Because you can really disappear into a dark hole. And so once all that was established, they had me start doing training their guys. And at first, they had me talking to like different police because they wanted to like maybe do like a border service police like kind of like train them how to do like low level intelligence gathering for the purposes of finding saboteurs and agents like from Belarus and other countries, even Western. They're actually very concerned with French nationals and other people, like not who you think, but like other people coming to the country and saying that they're journalists, that they're volunteers, and other people that are nefarious agents for the Russians and other people. And Lviv is like the West Berlin of the conflict. So like, it's like the only real permissive area for like international people to show up to, in a sense. So it's like the city of spies. So like all the like foreign intelligence services send their people there to like collect information, even ours. Like I met I saw some 4th Battalion guys, SF guys at a hotel once, and I was like, you guys are being so fucking obvious. Like you're dressing in like mountaineering pants and walking around in groups of 6, and like one. I know one of you is like ASOT certified, and you should know better than to kind of like highlight yourself. I'm like, if I saw you, somebody else saw you too. And I'm like, the security services here already know that you're here. So it was like a polite conversation. I'm like, you're going to go tell the person at the embassy that you met me. And you're going to fix yourselves. And like, this is just like a friendly reminder. And I'm sure they went and talked to the chief of station or somebody at the embassy about it. Yeah, so after that I was like, please let me do something else. And because meeting like police and border service people are cool and everything, but I was like, I'm still in Lviv, like I'm so far away from everything that's happening. So like they try to placate me, and I think the people that I was working for said over and over again, like, we're not ever letting you go to the front. Under no circumstances are you going anywhere close to the front. We're not putting you at risk. And it was disappointing because I was being expected to like train guys and how to do, certain things, and some of them have been to the front line since like 2014 and done stuff. And I was like, I can't teach people about stuff without having seen it myself. It's like, morally it's wrong for me to try to be like a Western instructor and like teach them things that, act like I'm better than them when I haven't even experienced like what they've experienced. And so like they started like placating me and letting me go to Kiev and meet other people, like kind of like the same rotation, like meeting VIPs and other people from the president's office and other agencies and stuff like that. And then it was kind of like, it was getting to be like the same situation where like they wanted me to meet people and be involved with things, but not ever leave the safety of Kiev and other places. And I trained some units up in Kiev, like some like security units, and some other people how to do man tracking and intelligence stuff, like low level stuff. And they even had me like, I was so bored in Kiev that I was like, please let me do something like I need to like work every day or something, because I would just like sit there with my thoughts, like thinking like, I'm here in country and I'm like not doing anything. I'm not doing exactly what I want to do. So I was like always putting pressure on them. And so they're like, yeah, you can go on the weekend. You can go and do like paramilitary training with the like their reservists and like foreign legion people. And so on the weekends I went with my translator, and she came with me, and we basically went and did Battle Drill 1, Battle Drill 2, and had to conduct an ambush, like easy stuff, did every NCO, and, because I went through that officer training too, so like I know how to do like all the leadership tasks, like troop leading procedures, and teaching them like the Western doctrine of, I think my boss at the time, he was like old Spetsnaz guy from like Afghan war. He was like in Afghanistan for like 20 years or something. like before, during, and after the war, and he was like one of their like intelligence, high level intelligence like dudes. He was very old. He's like probably in his 60s or almost 70 years old, and he was just like, I want you to train these guys in how to, same thing, like how to catch saboteurs and reconnaissance dudes and their foreign intelligence people that are coming in the country that are going to try to like recon our air defense sites and basically act as like a, you know, like normal CI stuff. And so I did that, and I did the regular like Bravo company type training. And after a while I was like, so are you going to let me go to the front? And this was like maybe like almost a month and a half in.
Yeah.
And of course, from, I don't know who it came from, like what level it came from, like presidential office or military office, or maybe even like, because I met like one of the assistant like the deputies of like GUR, like their Rosvitka, like under Budanov, and he was like, you don't need to go to the front. I'm like, but yeah, I was always like, but I want to go to the front, dude.
Like, dude, I'm here, man.
Yeah. And I was like, please let me get close, like let me see it, you know. And they just didn't want me to ever go anywhere. And I was like, they're like, you can go there on your own. Finally, they were like, you can go there on your own, but we're not helping you get there. And that was kind of like saying like, you can't go, you know. But I went. So one day I said, hey, I wrote a message to my translator. I'm like, I call him I'll say Mr. E. Tell Mr. E that I'm leaving Kiev and I'm going to Zaporizhia. And that I said I'm going to the east, and that if he wants to give me a contract that says I can do this, and you know that I'm able to, you know, like have some kind of paperwork that says that like I'm officially a part of something here, and I can go to the front if I want to. I have a military passport, but he wasn't going to, and I knew he wasn't going to, so I basically just left. And I went to Zaporizhia, and I of course like made contact like with my friends that were still there, and there were some Westerners that I know that were there in Zaporizhia, and one of them was an EOD guy, and he wanted me to go with him to go make breaching charges out of like PVC pipe, like basically make like handmade Bangalores.
Yeah.
Because like like I said, there was not enough like engineering equipment to get through like the breaching points and to like take care of mines and wire and stuff like that. And so his idea was that we go to the epicenter, which is like their Home Depot, and we buy, you know, a bunch of PVC pipe caps, plastic caps, and then basically make our own Bangalores. And so that was the idea. Went to Zaporizhia, got on the train, hit to Zaporizhia, and then I can't really talk about where I was there, but I was like in a village close to the like second line, and ended up moving from that to the there's an island where the old Cossack fortress is, and that's been totally closed to like, it used to be like almost like a national park with like a it's like got the tourism stuff on it and everything, but they totally closed it down, and it's like military base. It's like a big island in the middle of the river. And spent some time there and got my, I guess you could call it frontline experience in Zaporizhia. And then must have been like a few weeks there, and I was kind of getting close to the time that I had to go back without, you have to like get a military contract like for 6 months, and you have to like basically agree to stay there for like a certain amount of time to get a military contract, and then you can like have residency in the country and you don't have to leave.
Oh, nice.
But 90 days comes and you have to leave, or else you're gonna have problems. And because I had left Mr. E, I didn't have like overhead cover
Yeah.
To provide me say that I could stay in the country.
Well, just out of curiosity, and I'm sure people watching this are probably wondering the same thing. Like when you go over there and you're essentially a volunteer, like who's paying for your food?
Me.
So you're paying your own way.
Yeah, self-funded, and almost every volunteer is like that, and that's why you see a lot of volunteers. They'll have this is my PayPal, this is my whatever, because they are dependent completely because nobody's paying you.
Right.
And even if you're being paid, I think Foreign Legion guys, if you're literally fighting, you're in the Foreign Legion, right? Or you're a Westerner in a unit, Army unit, you're getting paid $300 a month, which is nothing.
Right.
You know, the average salary of a Ukrainian man, military person, is maybe $700 a month, and that's with them being on the front line, because what happens is, you get a base pay, and when you go to the first line, which is literally first line and zero line are you're literally in the trenches facing the Russians 30 meters away. If you're on the zero line, you get a bonus, you get a combat bonus. But you can't always stay on the zero line. So when you move back from the zero line, your combat pay ends. Even if you're on the second and third line, resting, you're not getting paid your combat bonus. So people think that guys are going over there as mercenaries and making a bunch of money. They're not. They're making $700 a month maybe.
I mean,
they'll say, oh, we can get 3,000, and even the Ukrainians will be you can get paid $3,000 a month, but you can't. Nobody's ever going to let you sit on the zero line, and you couldn't physically do it for a month. There's no possible way. So I was self-funded the whole time. I used my own money that I had saved up, and my own money to have a place to live, to have to eat, which honestly hryvnias are maybe you're paying a quarter of the price of everything. So you can buy groceries for yourself. Very good. The food there is amazing. You'd be surprised. You can take care of yourself very easily on a normal American paycheck, you know.
Yeah.
So I was in Zaporizhia. I left Zaporizhia because I had to rest because it was pretty stressful. Went to go visit my my friend in Kharkiv, and then basically I hung out in Kharkiv I had some meetings there with some other Western training organizations, but I very quickly had those meetings, and then I was chilling, and I basically just hung out in Kharkiv, and it was it's a beautiful city, the nicest city I've ever been to. Even though half of it's bombed, you know, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be. I love the people there, and I think I spent the last couple of weeks there, and then basically went from Kharkiv back to Lviv, and chilled there for a couple of days, and then left, and then said I'll be back. And people were asking when I'm gonna come back. So, So I guess I can go into some of the reasons for the conflict. I guess I want to make it clear the real reasons. Everybody sees what Putin said in his address at the beginning of the war. People see what they see from the American perspective, why are we there? You know, people say it's not our fight, whatever. And then some people are fervently there's some people on the liberal side, and other people that are oh, we're fighting for LGBT and all these things, you know, and they're brainwashed, pro-Ukraine, no question of why we're what the actual reasoning is, you know, and people kind of get focused on those two polar opposites of support or not support, and the origins of the war are not even what people think. It's it doesn't have anything to do with somebody who's bombing Donbass children or Russian language or anything like that. It's literally the same reason everything happens in the world and why wars happen in the first place: economics. Before 2014 and 2013, Putin and the government of China, Xi Jinping and all that, they met an unprecedented number of times in 2013. And you can look this up on the internet for economic cooperation. And what was happening was the Chinese were developing through their just like their colonialization efforts in Africa. They were developing a new Silk Road called the Belt and Road System, because they figured out early on. They try to make the sea routes through the South China Sea and through the Indian Ocean like their main transport route and try to control it as much as they could, but they figured out that the sea route is going to be contested by the United States and other countries. Philippines, you have to go through the Straits of Malacca and all those other places. Like there's choke points where like their shipping could be, if once they broke away from the United States, like economically, they would no longer be able to survive. You know, their transport system to Africa and other countries to the west, they couldn't do it. So they were still dependent on the United States. They were looking for a way to break away from us, so they could threaten us militarily, economically, which they do. And so they tried the Belt and Road system, which is basically they wanted to make a new Silk Road through Central Asia, into Russia, through Ukraine, and into Europe. And if you see a lot of the people in the European Union that are pro-Russian viewpoint, you'll say, for instance, like Viktor Orban, and a lot of the people that watch that are talking shit about Ukraine will be like, yeah, Viktor Orban hates the Ukrainian war, like he hates the Ukrainians, he's like pro-Russia, he's like pro all this, like he's like Trump, whatever. There's a reason that he's so against the conflict and against like Ukrainian interests. It's because guess exactly where that new Silk Road was supposed to end in Europe. Hungary. So he was going to be like the railhead for all the Chinese products that went across Central Asia into Russia, into Ukraine, and then dropped off in Hungary, and he was going to make a shitload of money. And so in 2014, they had like the government of Kazakhstan was Russian controlled, and China was like, Putin, you got to put this road, your road in order, you know. You got to get all these former Soviet states in order to we can build this road through where we want to build it through. And he's very dependent on China. He wanted this plan to happen. And so, as you saw, shortly before the full scale happened, they had to like reinforce the government of Kazakhstan because he's a puppet state. Belarus is a puppet state. And in 2013, Yanukovych was there in Ukraine, and he was a puppet of the regime in Moscow as well. And so everything was in place. But when the Maidan revolution happened in 2014, it really fucked them over, like, for their plan. They were planning on using all the Black Sea ports and the road that goes through Ukraine to get to Hungary and drop off all the Chinese products to make that road solidified. And so when that happened, China put pressure on Russia and said, you got to take care of this, problem in Ukraine. And so that's one of the reasons that he went in there and took Crimea and tried to take the whole country, because he wanted that Belt and Road system to work. Now China's looking at other routes through Turkey and other places, but they basically told Putin, get Ukraine, get this road finished, or like get the system of roads that can be finished, or we're not coming through Russia anymore with the products. And that's like a big deal to Russia because they depend so much on China for those products and for like economic exchange for trade. And so that literally was the reason for the conflict. It wasn't about like, this used to be Russia, this used to be, because I mean, Ukraine has never been just Russia. It's always been functionally part of different countries, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Poland, Lithuania. And they've always resisted. And then if you look at like Ukrainian, like UPA and OUN and other like independence organizations in Ukraine, like for the last, like in the modern history of Ukraine, even before that, like Ukraine has always been like Texas. They've always had like a skepticism of central government. They never wanted to have like be controlled by central government. They've never accepted people ruling over them. Even like empires, they've never wanted to be under the boot of an empire. They've always had like some sort of independence resistance movement within their territory. Against the Soviets, against the Poles, against the Austro-Hungarians, they've always wanted to break free from everybody. And the most recent, before the Maidan, was like in the 1950s, the CIA was funding the UPA, like the organization the Ukrainian partisan army was fighting against Soviet occupation in Ukraine. And so they're very much like Americans, like in their independence mindset. They don't want to be ruled over by somebody. And of course, this new thing, Chinese-Russian trade, like they didn't want that to influence the territorial integrity of their country. And they have a lot of problems with since the 90s, and I met some of these 90s guys, like mafia type people that like sold the country off,
Yeah.
And that was a big reason for the Budapest Accords, for them being denuclearized, because like literally these 90s guys were like selling off the whole country, it was like the biggest military production in the world, especially in like the East. Like they had the most military hardware to sell off, and including nuke stuff. And that was one of the reasons, like, they didn't want these 90 guys selling nukes to people, So that was a reason why they were taken away. And but those guys still exist, and a lot of the corruption and conspiracy to commit corruption is just so prevalent there. But it's like everybody has like corruption in their country, but it's like very open. Like the everyday citizen feels it.
Yeah.
So like one of the times I was driving north of Kiev to go to one of the training areas, like out there in the forest, and they stopped my driver, who's a good guy, and he like showed him his documents and everything, and we even had like like the police lights on the car and everything, and these local cops, like once you get outside the big cities, like the local cops are like bandits, dude, and they're like, your friend's drunk. And I was like, he's literally just had tea today. And I was like, here's my passport. Like, I'm American. This guy's he's like my escort. We're going somewhere. And they're like giving me problems. So like, he's drunk. We're gonna have to take his car and take him.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, how much money do I have to pay you to fuck off? And they're like, 20,000 hryvnia. And I was like, so I was like, well, yeah. Dude, you gotta pay these guys. And he's like, it's fine. So cops got paid, and then on the way, he makes a phone call to SBU. Next day, SBU rolls up to their police station and takes not only that money that they stole, but also like all the other money. And they're like, we're not gonna give it back to you, but we'll use it for something that matters, But like the everyday person like suffers from corruption, like,
yeah.
And it's funny because I told my translator about what happened, and she was so mad. Like she was like, I can't believe you did that. Because there's like people that want to get away from that, they're even if you're forced into a situation where you have to participate in corruption, you're still looked at as like a bad person because you participated, you did it, like you didn't accept the end result of like whatever they were trying to do to you.
Yeah.
Instead of like honor is like a currency there, so you're adding to the problem by letting them do it, and you're also like not taking that burden upon yourself to not to get rid of that culture of corruption, everyday corruption. And it recently the like you said, the literal like Defense Department head, Reznikov, was relieved, and they say it's because of corruption, but it's not necessarily like, and a lot of those people like are corrupt like in a general sense, like they are just like our politicians. But when I say that it goes down from like the top to the bottom, like everyday Ukrainian problem, people take advantage of it, and they know that they can. And so the health system there, you can go to a doctor and say, hey doc, I don't want to be conscripted and I have money. I want you to write that I don't have a leg. And they'll literally take money, and wow. This guy he's missing a leg. And that's why the government of Ukraine has to review all disability cases. Because they want to see if a guy like magically grows a leg, next month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like that's what I mean, like corruption is a big problem, like, and people don't want to, and like normal people don't want that to be like so prevalent in Ukraine, like the culture of corruption. But there's so many people that will take advantage of the system to keep themselves out of danger, or they'll say, like they'll have like travel documents like I can leave the country or not, or whatever. But I think they're trying to close a lot of those loopholes where they can have because a lot of people there's some people that are veterans who are disabled and they have PTSD or they have some other injury or something, and they want to fight. They want to serve their country. They want to do it. But when they get to the recruiting station, they're like, nope, you're hurt or you have this disease or whatever. So they've changed the laws probably in the last week where those guys can finally join and do their duty if they want to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's good. I guess that's good that they can finally serve, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? That Ukraine's having to change so they can take these guys in? That means they're hurting their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the size of the country of Ukraine, the size of Russia. I mean, Russia's actually not the very populous. Like Bangladesh has more people than Russia does. If you think of, like the tiny little country of Bangladesh has more dudes. But as far as like natural resources and even population, Russia is much bigger than Ukraine. And their ability to conscript people, even in use foreign countries like Kazakhstan and other former Soviet states, Belarus, to augment their forces, they will be able to. Whereas Ukraine will not.
Yeah.
I think they're on their ninth mobilization. And at some point, they're not going to have the guys anymore.
Right.
So if there's a long war, there's no choice. Either they're going to have to cede territory on Russia's terms, and then that's bad for NATO, and it's bad for global, they want a multipolar world where they control Europe and the United States control part of the globe or whatever. They want that conflict to come about again, like a Cold War, and they want that multipolarity. And if they take Ukraine, they can do that Belt and Road system like the Chinese want, and then we'll be in trouble because the Chinese will break away from the United States. The Chinese will try to destroy us economically and militarily in a hybrid warfare like they're doing now, even worse.
Always comes back to the goddamn Chicon.
Yeah, that's it. Freaking Chinese, man. And then the other alternative is that U.S. Third option, they send in paramilitary people first. I'm sure that would be the first step. Would be sending in third option guys, and then finally committing troops. And I think there's only a matter of time before one of those two events happen, and both of them are not good. One is empowering the BRICS bloc, I guess you could call it, and one is having a conflict. So I mean, really, it's not a winning situation, but it needs to be dealt with, and you can't. And guys who are sitting back in the United States saying, "This isn't our war," it is. Because the entire point of the war was to destroy the United States economically and militarily in that part of the world. And really, if you look at it with a hands-off situation, hands-off attitude, then one of those two bad things is going to happen, and really there needs to be some kind of engagement, we need to do this the right way. We need to take care of U.S. interests, because ultimately, that's my thing. This is not just Ukrainian interest, but it's my personal interest in the success and the safety and security in the United States, because I don't want any of those other bad scenarios to happen. And if I can do anything to help, then I will.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah.
So, well, awesome, man. I appreciate you swinging by and doing this with me today. This is outstanding, and again, this is just. Was a random guy in a chat on a live stream a couple weeks ago, and here he is standing here doing an interview with Warfighters. So, man, I wish you the best.
Thanks, brother.
And anytime you're in town, dude, hit me up.
Yes, I will.
And hopefully we can grab some beer sometime.
Yeah, we'll go shooting or something too.
Hell yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.